Apparently didn't. I don't know. I'm going to start over again because once in a while this thing shuts off on me. I started out showing these things, these freaky little scissors from Matco. All right, that number is an MUS, Mary Union Sam 65, Muskie 65, I think of it as. These things will, oh yeah, they'll cut what you're looking at. Number 4, battery cable. Number 2, now one thing I found out cutting a plastic 5-gallon pail, it won't cut at the tip. You have to get just above that little tip in there. I don't know what you call it, the point, because that's kind of a blunt edge, so it won't start it. As long as you stay up in here, one edge is serrated. I can cut plastic pails just like nothing. You can see here, you can put your thumb in there. That's very comfortable. You can put your hand over here this way. This is very comfortable. You can still open and close the bugger. What was the other one? Oh, you can go, standard scissors. You can do it this way, palming it. You can do it the other way. I mean, you can hold it any comfortable way you want. Also has crimpers in there and wire strippers. The one crimper is specifically for your standard wire ends, and the other one supposedly for barrel connectors, to try and keep them as close to round and from widening out as possible, because they're usually designed to slide in. Which also means if you're careful, you can use those on the little pin connectors in your Deutz fittings and such, your Deutz connectors. What did Komatsu used to call them? Cannon plugs. So one guy yelled at me and said, they're not Cannon plugs. Cannon is different. Well, Cannon was a different name for the similar style plug that was all the same, a Deutsch plug. There's another one too, I can't remember the name of it, that uses the same barrel style connectors. So it'll work good for that, because you need to crump in the wire, but you can't have it expand. It needs to have a tall shoulder in the middle so you can get it in there and click it into the coupling fitting. Anyway, to get back into where I was before, and I thought this thing was working, so I have to go back and check and see what worked and didn't. I was talking about antifreeze. And there's been times that if I go longer than they like, they'll shut me off. So I'm going to try and speed this up. This is a Thexton for your DEF fluid. Okay. One disc is 30, or 0 discs is below 29%, worthless. One disc is 30%. 2 is optimal. That's why the one is green. White means it's too light. And when the blue one means it's too heavy, in other words, the water that's mixed into it has evaporated. Now you say, how does that happen? Well, if you remember, your diesel exhaust fluid has urea in it, and the urea will actually settle out and end up like a powder or even a hard crust in the bottom. And then you have just almost exclusively water that evaporates, so you can get to 35%. And when it does, then you can't mix that stuff back in there very well at all. Once it's hardened, everything's junk. Yeah, I say we've got one of the first, I think, Komatsu PC -10s in, no, -11 in, and the system had sat so long it separated in all the piping. They'd replace it all. He was not a happy camper. Oh, by the way, this is a Thexton model 108. Okay, here's a Thexton copy. I've had Thextons in these in years past. It's your antifreeze tester. These things work very, very well, but you have to remember to rinse them out. And if you're one of those lunatic purists out there that like to gripe about things, yes, you have to dry it out as best you can. And anytime you test antifreeze with any of these, doesn't matter what variety, you can rinse the thing out to try and keep it clean, because sometimes buildup on the discs changes them, makes a mess out of things. But if you can, clean it with clean water. And when you go to check next time, put it into the antifreeze, fill it up, and then spray it back out into the radiator and fill it up again. It's not hard. So for you purists freaking out about the water, take a break, okay? It's not that hard. And you'll find out that it doesn't change much. These things are relatively crude, but very accurate for what they are. And as you can see there's the numbers. One disc is 25 above. 2 discs is 5 above. 3 discs is 10 below. 4 discs is 25. 5 discs is 34 below. And then you'll see number 6, the last one, orange, not safe. Why isn't it safe? It isn't safe for one main reason. It's too thick. If you get in very, very cold environments and you get it too thick, because some people say, it's a lot better when you make it thicker. Well, yeah, but now it doesn't circulate well. So you can get hot spots easier, even in a cold climate. Some people like to mix it thicker and go into a hot climate. It's not increasing your boilover protection enough. The 50-50 ideal mix is where you're going to get your best world of everything. There's 3 main components. 3. And if you're one of the college guys, it's 3. Or what's the other one? 3. Yeah. That's for the weirdos. 3. Freeze point, 34 below zero. Boilover point increases as well. That goes up to someplace around 220, I think. Yeah, I said 210 before, but it just ignore me. Goes up to like 210 or so, and then some of the cans will give you a pressure rating of your radiator, where if it's 4, 7, 10, 15 pounds on the radiator, and tell you what the boilover point is with your 50-50 mix. But cooling and boilover are 2 totally different things. Okay? You can, how can I say it? You can reduce your mix, say 40-60. It'll actually cool slightly better because there's water in there. That's your major cooling component. But your boilover protection drops. Well, within a certain range, you're going to cool better. That lower boilover point's insignificant. Plus, you have pressure on your radiator. Unless you're in the old antiques like I run. Even when they were pressurized, they're too old. They ain't pressurized no more. So you have to watch that. Within a certain range, that works just fine. Now, when we were doing the pulling tractor stuff, they put antifreeze in there to coat everything, but it was only 25%. I said, why? Well, there are 2 main reasons. One of them is cooling in the engine. They increased the boiling point with the radiator cap, but instead of the usual 7 or 10 pound, it was a 15 pound. And also to be able to circulate when an engine that was designed to run at 2,500 RPM is now running over 5,000. Just saying. Yeah. Seriously. But that's all it was, to keep it cool. And that's number 3. Number 1, your freeze, boil protection, and your chemical protections. Those are your 3 things to remember when you're in antifreeze. They don't put the charts on the back of them like they used to. They used to put a chart on there to tell us what percentage of mix did this, because around the country, all over, from Florida all the way up through Alaska, there were different mixes. And last I knew, there was never a 100% mix anywhere in the world, unless you're an idiot. Seriously. You could get to, I think there's 75% you could get to 80 below. But you're in an environment, you're not worried about cooling or overheating. You could almost run with nothing in it. Okay, last but not least, because I'm still flying and it hasn't shut me off this time. I showed you the 2 basics. But in here is your refractometer. It's optical. That's what the long doodad here is for. Now you see the rubber cap that covers up a screw. What's that screw for? You take a drop of water, flip this back gently, and these break here. If it breaks, it doesn't make that much difference. Just put the plate back on there and hold it. But what you're looking for is you just put a drop on here on your screen. So you'll have to hold it. When it's water, it'll run all over the place. Get as much water as you can to lay down here on the screen. Now this screen is a little rough, so it can hold the contents on there. This is a cheaper one. I had one from Leica, Leica. It's out of Buffalo, New York. Yeah, I found out back when I bought the thing 25 years ago or more. I bought it used for $60 or $70, and they're almost $400. And all it took, a little teeny screen the size of my pinky nail with a little flapper door. And I had it until recently. It finally failed. I think it's a lifetime warranty too, but by the time I shipped it out and back, I just decided, nah, I wouldn't do it. But still, I had a teeny screen. It was so precise. It's a beautiful unit. So these have been proven accurate over the years. What the adjustment is, you put your water in here, you look on here, and inside are 4 screens. Okay? Yeah, you're just going to see a reflection. But inside are 4 screens. Now, I can't see them very well now. Well, I almost can. If I get it just right. That's the funny part. Okay. I've got 4 screens. Oh my goodness. Let me try something. I'll be right back so I can see this for you. I should have brought water in. I didn't think of it. Now that's the funny thing. You saw that this thing is blue, correct? Well, blue is what, when there's nothing on there of anything, the whole screen internally is blue, and all you see is hash marks and sometimes the gradient measurements. Already dripping. I got to keep it off my keyboard. All right. Now, this one also has focus. There we are. We're focused in. Now, almost if I keep this down, it'll show me the water line. Yeah, I've already lost some water. There we go. If you get the light right, there's a water line at the bottom. And I know you can't see it, but all the way at the bottom is a line. And the water line is your calibration point, which is what the screw is for. You turn the screw so the edge where the bottom of the screen below the water line is white. Above it is blue. So it's calibrated on the line. It's perfect already. And that's the beauty of this thing. You can calibrate it. Now, what scales do I have here? Add blue, top right. There's one for windshield washer fluid in here too. That's bizarre. And there's ethylene glycol, propylene glycol, and a battery scale. So this one has 5 scales. I knew I had 4. I didn't realize this cheap one had 5. Well, what's the difference? Propylene glycol, ethylene glycol, battery acid level, which is usually 60. It's very similar to your DEF fluid. It's like 60 something percent water and 30 something percent acid that's in your battery, sulfuric acid. Now hydrochloric, sulfuric. Now there's your AdBlue, that's your DEF. The scale only is 30 to 35 because you want to be in the middle of it. And then your propylene and ethylene glycols, which are off by a relative amount. So anyway, I figured I'd toss that out there to you. I've forgotten how these work, but the fact that it has windshield washer fluid in it, that's beautiful. Well, what's the significance of that? Main significance of that is you want to gently clean these off every time you're through too. Remember I said before, those disc hydrometers, they can collect. And that's one of the problems I have with this is it can put a film on there and it'll change how accurate this thing is. You want some nice clean cloth. Make sure it's wiped off dry and clean. Be careful about slapping that thing too many times. But then again, it's now that I've looked in there, it's calibrated. There is a water line. So that calibrates everything. All the other scales are calibrated off of that. That's funny because your DEF is up here to top right. Your windshield washer fluids bottom right. In the middle is your ethylene glycol, propylene glycol, and over to the left on me is where your actual battery acid scale is. That's pretty interesting. And but it doesn't get, it gives you a number, but it's percent of charge, depending on how much is in the water. Now, we used to do that all the time. We had a hydrometer. We test the cells. And then now this is back, we're talking just as batteries with open, the top straps were just disappearing. So I'm talking in the late 70s, mid 70s, and there when I started getting into the more mechanical stuff in my teen years. And we used to test with a hydrometer, but we also used to test with a voltmeter, and they used to have a special voltmeter. I've got one out in the shop. There's a little teeny dial on it for very few volts. I think it goes as high as 2.5 or 3 volts, and has 2 little points on it and a ribbon in between. And the idea is you go from positive to negative of the connectors for a cell, and you test the voltage of each individual cell. And if you have one that's off too much of a percent, where you've got several of them that are at I forgot what they used to be, like 2.2 If they're fully charged in a good condition, they'd be someplace between 1.9, 2, or to be once you get to 2, you start getting into trouble, or a little bit below 2. But they wanted to be somewhere between 1 3/4 and 2.5 volts. But if one was at 2.5 volts and another was at 1 3/4, and they've been on the same charge, your battery's junk. It's just they only wanted a few percent. If you're 2.2 and you take 10% off, what do you got? You're 0.2. So if it varied too much more, one cell is worse than the rest and you've got a problem. So that's one of the reasons it's in here. That's old school. Probably the foreigners still use it. For us, we have to hook it up and push it and let a computer do our testing. Oh, I got a number. My 575 battery has 275. Oh, it says junk. Okay, I'll junk it. That's simple. So, and those they used to tell us why. If one was 575 cranking amps, and I've seen it before. It's rare, but it happens. You'll see it with 375 or 425, and you're thinking, hey, that's pretty good. But it has that, but the main voltage is almost 13 volts. It'll tell you got a problem. Why? Because the battery needs too many volts to charge it. So even though you've got enough capacity, you don't have enough actual, how can I say it? The battery is no longer serviceable because your alternator is not going to charge it well enough. Especially when you get up 13.5 volts that the occasional battery does. And your system's only charging with 14 like we used to have. John Deere back in the 70s had a problem with that because a guy came in and told us in the mid-70s he had an entire line come in and they had to replace every single battery in it because the batteries were at 13.5 volts. Then the little alternators on the Briggs & Stratton and Kohlers didn't put on enough to charge it sufficiently. They said you could go out and mow your lawn for an hour, come back, then it wouldn't charge the battery if you had trouble starting it. So you'd go out and mow your lawn 4 or 5 times, it's dead. Because the starting of the unit took more amps than the alternator had time to charge the battery back up. So to change the batteries and bring them all down below 13 volts, problem solved. Now, what's another one to go along with that? Lawn Boy was supposedly OMC, Outboard Marine Corporation, built Lawn Boy lawnmowers. They were the cream of the crop, so they said. They sent out some of the early electric starts, and every one of them failed, 100% failure. Because some genius on the board says you charge the batteries with amps. You don't charge them with volts. So they sent out all these alternators with 1.5 volts and 5 amps, or 3 amps, I think it was. And I just said to him, what are they, insane? Well, I guess they got the bright idea that they could use the battery somehow to put it in series with the alternator to boost it above the battery's basic voltage and charge it. They had some bright idea that's worked on paper. 100% failure. 1.5 volts. Said some of them put out a whole 2 volts against a 12 volt or a 6 volt battery. I had no words for that. And there I was in my 20s thinking, these are supposed to be adults. What the heck? Over? When the guy sat there teaching the course, spewed the Lawn Boy OMC line. You charge a battery with amps. I looked at him and said, you do. But if you don't have the volts to push them in there, it doesn't matter how many amps are available. I was only 22 at the time? 21? I was like, who comes up with this crap? He said, I don't know, but that's what we were taught in physics. So, when you get back to this stuff, be careful of your scales. But do check your battery with this. If you think you have a problem, you have one of these with a battery scale, don't be a fool. Use it, especially if you got your 4Ds, your 4DLTs, your 8D batteries, the ones that I'm commonly familiar with out in construction world. Group 30H, 31H, you start getting into some money. Are you kidding? A battery for my stupid little V6 3.5 liter car, $160. Who does that? One that I bought previous to that was just over $100. Presidents make a difference. So anyway, I'm into this thing for 20 minutes. Nobody's watching this time because I think I botched the other video, shut it off, bumped the keyboard, something shuts these things off. And sometimes YouTube just says, you've gone too long, we don't like it. And they actually do watch the algorithm. I'll say something and they won't like it, it's gone. So we'll let you go for that. And another, for those of you guys that shoot muzzle loaders, I found these in the Seneca gun shop. They were 45s. I just picked them up and bought them because I thought they looked cool. Didn't pay attention to the caliber. In fact, I picked up some slugs that I was originally thinking were 20 or 12 gauge. I just saw them, picked them up, some purple. Oh well, they're Brennecke's. Brought them home. I was like, oh crap, they're 16 gauge slugs. I thought, cool. I have an old antique H&R 16 gauge modified choke. Game on. Someday I'll probably hunt deer with it. Well, it's no good. 50 yards. You aren't going past 50 yards without luck, or the Lord grabbing a hold of the slug and taking it for you. But I've had a modified choke, 20 gauge. I still have it. I shot Brennecke and what were the other slugs? Probably Remington out of the thing. At 40 yards, I had a patch like that. It only has one bead for sight. Did it more than once. So the possibility exists. Good possibility. But I'm not there yet. Most of the shots I'm going to end up taking so far have been almost anything I've had in the last almost 10 years. Not quite. Probably 7 or 8 have been 100-yard shots. And I'm not used to scopes yet. I like open sights, but you can't see clearly that far. So I'm taking a shot where I'm taking my time, get it. And the last one I did, I shot right by the shoulder. There was blood on stuff all the way back through. Hours later, we couldn't find the thing. Gone. I mean, the thing was bleeding all over the place. So that's when I see stuff like this. It's like, if I get a little more accuracy and penetration, I'm in. So 30-30 is about 80 yards. It didn't quite have enough. When it was a Hornet A2. So what do you do? All right, you folks have a good time, and remember, when you're checking your antifreeze, your def, and all of that, be mindful. And you say, why in the world would they have windshield washer? Last but not least, a little idiot. When we were at Anderson Equipment, they brought in a little 28, 29-year-old turd. Thought he was God's gift to the world. The narcissist. I mean, just a piece of work. He got a barrel of windshield washer fluid. So we started pumping it out. He started screaming, didn't you read the top? What do you mean we can't be out already? What are you talking about? You're supposed to mix it. Kevin and I started laughing. Mix it? It barely works now. You don't mix that stuff. Yeah, you're going to mix it now. I said, why? It'll freeze. And then you read the label and it says, you can mix it, but you don't need to mix it. And it'll give you a better freeze point if you don't. Or in the middle of winter, listen to the little idiot scream. So it would have been nice to have one of these. Don't let management think that they're smarter than anybody in the shop. There was a guy, his name was Roger, on a farm over in Candor. Roger was a simple guy. Okay? I liked Roger, but Roger was a hothead too. What Roger had was a memory, partly because he was somewhat simple. But the farm guys all came from Cornell. Dad worked with Cornell and learned from Cornell, and the boys both went to Cornell. They knew their stuff. One day the chopper plugged up and they called me out there. And I was just learning the herd. Then we brought it back to the shop and found out what the problem was, and he was chopping hay with a corn shield in place that protected the lower smooth roll, because when corn would kick back out, roll around the rollers, the shield would catch it and send it back through the chopper. Kernels and other stuff, they wouldn't be on the ground, they'd go through the chopper. He left it in for hay, and it wrapped up that roll so tight that it would have made a baler jealous, okay? So I'm in there trying to get the thing out. I end up drilling a couple of holes and prying the thing out, get it out, clean off the roll, and send it back out in the field. And Roger sat there and said, "You went out and do that?" No, he left that shield in again, didn't he? He says he's done it every year that he said that, Chopper, and he'll never remember to take it out. So I went back and said something to Wayne. I said, Roger said he warned you about that. What do you mean? That shield in there. He doesn't know everything. He doesn't. No, he doesn't. But I said, Roger does know some things, and he's not the idiot that you guys think he is. Well, I don't need. Well, you're going to get it. So I sat there fighting for what, 2-3 hours cleaning that all up because you didn't think to take that plate out of there? I said, if Roger knows, you certainly should have known. You drive the chopper. So don't let management get all over you like that. Every once in a while, just give them a blank stare and a chuckle. And if they give you attitude, what are you chuckling for? I said, you arguing with me. That's funny. And just walk off. Don't give them the argument. Don't give them anything else. Just walk off. That's all Roger could do. And I made sure Roger's point was made later because it was another screw up. In fact, as it turned out, because of the way I handled the operation, they said usually they were down for over a day. So, following instructions. It's amazing. Management's in place to do one thing, manage the activity that's in the shop. But if management starts listing, and this is anywhere that I've been in the last 45 years, anywhere, if management lists for you how you are going to do a repair, you better be a rookie. And you better go out in the shop and talk to somebody else that has time to talk to you, that has more experience. I have never, ever seen any manager anywhere, anytime, including business owners, once they've given up that shop duty or even parts duties to someone else or sales duties, they are lost in the system unless they keep themselves current and actually work in each part of it. Come out in the shop and do a few services and assemble some machines to see what's missing in the shop. Go into the parts room to find out how inefficient that you've set up your hose making, or where your parts are, this type of parts and where they're located and how the system is working, the loading and unloading dock, all of that to find out how inefficient that stuff is. I can tell you when I was at Empire Tractor, you would have thought a complete imbecile from Romper Room put together the back parts room. A total idiot. And when I went into the shop, it was like, well, when you walk in, it looks big and impressive, but I said, I can guarantee you no mechanic put this shop together. And he said, no, that is absolutely correct. It's my first day in the building. When I walked into the parts room, I said, who designed this mess? I said, you see that too? And off he walked. Management is not that smart. And management, if any of you are out there listening to this, my last parting jab, if you don't have the confidence, decency, and intelligence to talk to your people about what they need. Now, in Empire, the idea was they built the building for a certain amount of money and found out that they needed to spend more. But they couldn't because when we walked to the town board for zoning, the zoning had changed in between the time they built the building and when they wanted to add on, and they couldn't do it. Couldn't afford to. Well, partially wouldn't afford to. One wall would have had to have been concrete block. That's all. We ain't paying for it. We want pole barn stuff. A, management, you're morons. B, just build the dang wall. B, you should have thought about that crap in the first place, dude. Simple. They had a concrete pad out back. If they just built the building over top of it in the first place, they would have had cold storage for a lot of other stuff. They could have put big doors to run your equipment in and out. There's a lot of stuff they could have done different. They could have even left it open, except it was to the west and north. Ugh. But it was totally open as it was. Would have been nice just to have a rain shield. Back the customers up, load them, and have all the parts guys. And even some of the salesmen undercover loading for customers. What a thought! But there we were out there in pouring torrential rain, blowing snow, wind, and hail. My parting shot at management. You guys have a good day. And remember, you managers that do give the time. There were two, one of them named Jeff and the other one named John. John Rosh and Jeff Cole. They were two that earned the right to be managers. Oh, they'd argue about certain things here and there, but what they were arguing about was something that they were concerned about and how it would fit into what I was going to do. When we got done, it worked out that they had a rough idea what I was doing so they could answer above, When the customer called, they had a rough idea how to talk with them. And when I came back, if I said something to him and talked to the customer and the customer called, we were all in the same circle. And the customer says, guy ain't very bright, but dang, he tries hard. You guys are doing pretty good down there. And I heard that more than once. Take that to the bank.